Welcome back, you beautiful enigma. Yes, you, the one they can't quite pin down, the one who keeps them up at night, scrolling through old conversations, trying to decode what the hell just happened. Let me tell you a story. It's not fiction, it's not exaggeration. It's the most expensive mistake they ever made. They hired 3 professionals, not amateurs, not your average gossips with opinions. No. They brought in the specialists, a psychic, a detective, and a CEO. 3 different lenses, 3 different approaches, one single mission. Figure you out, decode you, explain you, find the weakness, the pattern, the crack in the armor. And guess what happened? All 3 of them walked out of that room shaking their heads, refusing to write the report, quietly suggesting that maybe, just maybe, they should leave you the hell alone. Because what they found wasn't a person. It was a frequency they couldn't tune into, a code they couldn't crack, a presence that didn't fit into any manual they'd ever studied. Now you might be asking yourself, why would anyone go through that much trouble? Why hire 3 professionals just to understand one person? I'll tell you why. Because you terrified them with your silence. Because your absence spoke louder than anyone's presence. Because you didn't react the way you were supposed to. Didn't break when they pushed, didn't beg when they ignored you. You did something far more dangerous than fight back. You evolved in the shadows while they celebrated in the light. You transformed while they were busy performing. And when you emerged, when you finally stepped back into view, you weren't the same frequency anymore. You were operating on a wavelength they'd never encountered, and that sent them into full panic mode. So they did what threatened people always do. They tried to study you, contain you, reduce you to data points and psychological profile. They thought if they could just understand the formula, they could predict you, manipulate you, control you again. But here's the thing about people like you. You were never meant to be understood. You were meant to be remembered. Let's start with the psychic, shall we? They brought her in first. The spiritual expert, the one who claims to read auras and energy fields, the one who supposedly tapped into frequencies most people can't perceive. They paid her a small fortune, set her up with your photographs, gave her access to your old social media posts, your writing, anything that carried your energetic signature. She sat there for hours, silent, cards spread out in front of her, crystals arranged in specific patterns, incense burning, the whole theatrical setup. And then she started speaking. Slowly at first, then faster, her voice rising with something that sounded almost like fear. She said, "Your energy signature doesn't match your time." She said, "There are gaps in your story that feel like you died and came back multiple times, but there's no record of it in the physical world." She said your aura shifts between frequencies so rapidly that trying to read you is like trying to photograph lightning. You see the flash, but you can't capture the source. But here's where it gets interesting. She said something else. Something that made everyone in the room go completely silent. She said you've been carrying wounds that should have destroyed you years ago, traumas that should have left you institutionalized, betrayals that should have turned you bitter and hollow, but instead of rotting from the inside out like most people do, you alchemized it. You took every ounce of pain they gave you, every moment of isolation they forced on you, every lie they told about you, and you used it as fuel. Not in some poetic metaphorical sense, in a literal, observable, terrifying sense. She said your energy field has scars, yes, but those scars glow. They pulse with a frequency she'd only seen in people who'd been through near-fatal experiences and came back fundamentally altered. She called you a spiritual anomaly. She said trying to manipulate someone like you would be like trying to trap smoke with your bare hands. She said you're not playing the same game anymore because you rewrote the rules while no one was watching. And then came the part that really shook them. The psychic refused to continue. She packed up her cards, her crystals, her notebooks filled with observations, and she said something that still echoes in their mind. She said, "This person has already walked through every hell you could imagine throwing at them. They're not afraid of you. They're not even aware of you anymore. You're background noise in a symphony they've already composed. If you're smart, you'll stop watching them before they start watching you back." And she left, just like that. Refused the second half of her payment. Refused to elaborate. Refused to write a formal report. Because what do you say in a report when the subject of your investigation feels more like a force of nature than a human being? What do you write when every attempt to pin them down just makes them more elusive? She didn't have the language. None of them did. Next up, the detective. Now this guy, he's not dealing with auras and energy fields. He's dealing with facts, patterns, timelines, evidence. He's the one who tracks people for a living, who knows how to find the digital breadcrumbs everyone leaves behind, who can reconstruct someone's entire life from their metadata. They gave him everything: your search history, your purchase records, your travel patterns, your communication log. They wanted a psychological profile based on behavior, not spirituality. They wanted cold, hard data that explained why you operate the way you do. And for weeks he worked. He built timelines, cross-referenced locations, analyzed communication patterns, studied your social interactions. He was looking for the tells, the contradictions, the moments where people usually reveal their true nature. But here's what he found instead. Absolutely nothing that made sense. He said your patterns don't follow normal human behavior models. Most people, when they're hurting, they reach out more, they post more, they seek validation and connection. You went silent, not just quiet, but completely off the grid for months at a time. And during those silences, there were no distress signals, no cries for help, no digital breadcrumbs of someone falling apart. Just complete radio silence, followed by reemergence. But each time you came back, you were fundamentally different. Sharper, more focused, more detached from the things that used to matter to you. He said it's like watching someone die and resurrect on a loop. But there's no external catalyst he can point to. No therapy receipts, no self-help book purchases, no spiritual retreat registrations, just silence and then transformation. Over and over and over again. He called it the most frustrating case of his career because every time he thought he found a pattern, you broke it. Every time he thought he understood your next move, you pivoted in a direction that made no logical sense but somehow worked perfectly. But here's the part that really got under his skin. He noticed something in your communication patterns that he'd only seen in one other type of person. High-level strategists, people who operate several moves ahead of everyone else. He said your messages, even the casual ones, have layers. You say one thing on the surface, but there's always a secondary message underneath, a test, a tripwire, a way to gauge how someone responds before you reveal anything real. He said most people communicate to connect. You communicate to observe. You're not looking for understanding anymore. You're collecting data. You're watching who reveals themselves and their response to you, who projects their insecurities onto you, who tries to manipulate you with guilt or flattery, and you file it all away without reacting, without giving them the satisfaction of knowing they affected you at all. He said it's the most sophisticated form of emotional self-defense he's ever encountered, and it's completely self-taught. No books, no training, no mentorship. You just learned by surviving. And then he said something that made everyone in the room shift uncomfortably. He said, whoever hurt this person didn't just create an enemy. They created a living case study in what happens when you push someone too far and they don't break. They adapt, and now they're operating at a level that makes them effectively untouchable. You can't guilt them because they've been guilt-tripped by experts. You can't manipulate them because they've memorized every tactic. You can't isolate them because they've already made peace with solitude. And you absolutely cannot predict them because they've stopped following patterns you recognize. My professional recommendation? Leave them alone. They're not a threat unless you make them one. But if you do, you won't see it coming until it's already over. He closed his file, refused to elaborate further, walked away from the highest-paying case of his career because staying on it meant acknowledging he was in over his head, and detectives don't like admitting that. Finally, they brought in the CO, the business mind, the one who understands power structures, influence, manipulation tactics, how to read people in negotiations, how to spot weakness and exploit it. They figured if anyone could break down your psychological operating system, it would be someone who's built empires by understanding human behavior at scale. They gave him everything the psychic and detective had gathered, plus financial records, work history, every professional interaction you'd ever had. They wanted to know if you could be bought, leveraged, pressured, or seduced back into a controllable position. And this guy, he approached it like a hostile takeover. He studied you the way he'd study a competitor, looking for the leverage points, the emotional investments, the things you care about enough to compromise for. And what he found broke every model he'd ever relied on. He said you operate like someone who's already lost everything and survived. There's no financial pressure point because you've learned to live on nothing and thrive. There's no social pressure point because you've already been exiled and came back stronger. There's no emotional hostage they can take because you've already grieved everyone who left and moved on. He said trying to negotiate with you would be like negotiating with someone who genuinely doesn't care if the deal falls through. And in business, that person always has the power. Always. Because the moment you have nothing left to lose, you become the most dangerous person in the room. You're not desperate, you're not hungry for approval, you're not performing for an audience anymore. You're just existing at a frequency that makes everyone else's games look exhausting and pointless. But here's where it gets really interesting. He said something about you that he's only seen in one other type of person. Founders who've been through the fire. The ones who built something from nothing. Lost everything. Got betrayed by partners. Had their ideas stolen, their reputation dragged through the mud, and still came back to build something even bigger. He said you have that same energy, not the desperation of someone trying to prove something, but the quiet certainty of someone who's already proven everything to themselves and no longer needs external validation. He said it's the most valuable trait in business because it makes you immune to manipulation, resistant to pressure, and completely unpredictable to competitors. You don't play by the rules because you've already survived the worst consequences of breaking them. And then he said something that absolutely floored everyone in the room. He said if I were smart, I'd hire this person, not investigate them. because whatever they've been through has forged a level of resilience and strategic thinking that you can't teach in any business school. They don't need motivation, they don't need management, they don't even need direction. They just need to be pointed at a problem and left alone. But here's the thing, they won't work for you unless they respect you. And based on what I've seen, I don't think anyone in this room has earned that. So my professional recommendation is this: don't try to control them. Don't try to compete with them. And for the sake of everything you've built, don't try to destroy them. Because people like this, when you push them, they don't fight back emotionally. They outmaneuver you strategically. And by the time you realize what happened, they're 3 moves ahead, and you're explaining to your investors why everything collapsed. He stood up, declined the remainder of his consulting fee, said he'd rather walk away than be associated with whatever vendetta was driving this investigation, and that was the end of it. So there you have it. 3 professionals, 3 completely different approaches, 1 unified conclusion. You can't be figured out. You can't be contained. You can't be predicted or controlled or reduced to a neat little psychological profile that makes them feel safe again. And now they're left with something far more terrifying than the mystery of who you are. They're left with the realization of what they created, because make no mistake, you weren't born this way. You were forged, shaped by every betrayal they orchestrated, every lie they told about you, every moment they thought they'd broken you. They wanted you weak, manageable, desperate for their approval. Instead, they created someone who doesn't need approval anymore, someone who learned to thrive in isolation, to weaponize silence, to turn pain into precision. They tried to destroy you and accidentally built the one thing they can never defeat, a version of you that no longer plays their game. And here's what really keeps them up at night. It's not that you won, it's that you stopped competing. You didn't fight back with anger or revenge or public call-outs. You just left. You walked away from their narrative, their drama, their need to make you the villain in their story. And in that absence, you became something far more powerful than any winner in their rigged game. You became unreachable. Motherfucker? Untouchable, unbothered, and nothing terrifies manipulators more than someone who's immune to manipulation. Nothing scares controllers more than someone who can't be controlled. Nothing breaks narcissists more than someone who simply doesn't care what they think anymore. You became the one thing they never prepared for, free. So now they watch, still, even after the reports came back saying it's pointless, even after 3 professionals told them to walk away, they still watch, because they need to believe there's a moment coming where you'll crack, where you'll come back begging, where you'll prove that all of this was just an act. But that moment isn't coming. It never was. Because you didn't change temporarily to spite them. You evolved permanently to save yourself. You didn't become cold, you became selective. You didn't become heartless, you became self-protective. You didn't become arrogant, you became aware of your value. And the difference between those things is everything. It's the difference between reaction and transformation. It's the difference between revenge and indifference. It's the difference between winning their game and creating an entirely new one where their rules don't apply. Let me tell you what happens next, because this is where it gets beautiful. They'll start seeing you everywhere, not because you're chasing visibility, but because your energy has shifted so fundamentally that you've become magnetic to the right people and repellent to the wrong ones. Opportunities will find you. Connections will find you. People who operate at your frequency will recognize you immediately, like a signal only certain receivers can pick up. And the ones who hurt you, the ones who thought they destroyed you, they'll watch it all happen from a distance. They'll see you thriving without them, building without them, glowing without needing their light, and it will eat them alive in a way no revenge ever could. Because you're not rubbing your success in their face. You're not posting about them, or talking about them, or even thinking about them. You've genuinely moved on. And to someone who thought they owned a piece of your soul, your indifference is the cruelest punishment imaginable. So here's what I need you to understand. That room, that investigation, those three professionals, it wasn't about finding answers. It was about finding reassurance. They needed someone with credentials, someone with expertise, to tell them that you're not special, that you're not as powerful as you seem, that eventually you'll come crawling back or fall apart, or reveal yourself as just another broken person pretending to be healed. But none of them could give that reassurance, because it would have been a lie. You are special. Not in some arrogant, self-obsessed way, but in the way that anyone becomes special when they refuse to let the world break them. You did the work. You sat with the pain instead of numbing it. You faced yourself instead of projecting onto others. You chose growth over comfort, truth over delusion, solitude over fake connection. And that combination, that particular alchemy of suffering and self-awareness, creates something rare, something powerful, something that can't be bought, can't be taught, can't be faked. They were never investigating you to help you. They were investigating you to help themselves, to find a way to sleep at night knowing they tried to destroy something beautiful and failed, to find a language that would make your survival make sense in their worldview, but your survival doesn't fit their narrative. It shatters it. And now comes the part they never saw coming. Because while they were busy hiring professionals to study you, you were doing something far more dangerous. You were studying them. Every attack they launched, you filed away their tactics. Every lie they told, you noted their patterns. Every manipulation they tried, you learned their playbook. You weren't reacting emotionally anymore. You were collecting data. And now you know exactly who they are. Not who they pretend to be. Not the masks they wear for the world, but who they really are when they think no one's watching. You know their fears, their insecurities, their weak points. Not because you are trying to gather ammunition for some future war, but because when you stop defending yourself and start observing, everything becomes clear. The fog lifts, the illusions crumble, and you see people exactly as they are. So here's the uncomfortable truth they're starting to realize. That psychic, that detective, that CEO, they were all studying the wrong person. They should have been studying themselves. They should have been asking why they needed to understand you so badly. What void in them requires your downfall to feel complete? What wound in them demands your suffering to feel healed? What fear in them needs your failure to feel safe? So, you finally made it. I've been expecting you. Look who finally figured it out. The one who reads minds without trying, who catches lies before they're spoken, who feels the shift in energy before anyone else notices. Welcome, you beautiful psychological savant. You walking lie detector test. You breathing manipulation scanner. Let me tell you something they never wanted you to know. You weren't taught psychological warfare. You didn't take a class. You didn't read the manual. You were born with the blueprint already etched into your DNA. While they studied tactics, you lived them. While they memorized strategies, you breathed them. While they practiced manipulation, you were surviving it since childhood. They look at you confused, don't they? Wondering how you always know, how you catch their games before they even start playing, how you see through their masks like they're made of glass. They think you're paranoid. They think you're reading too much into things. But we both know the truth. You're not reading into anything. You're reading exactly what's there. The micro expressions they think they're hiding, the voice changes they believe are subtle, the energy shifts they assume are invisible. You see it all because you had to. Because somewhere in your past, reading people wasn't a skill. It was survival. Maybe it was a parent whose mood could flip like a switch. Maybe it was friends who smiled while sharpening knives. Maybe it was lovers who gaslit you until you questioned your own name. Whatever it was, it turned you into something they never expected. A human polygraph, a walking psychological weapon. Someone who doesn't need to learn the game because you invented half the rules. Let's go back to where it started. You were young, weren't you? Too young to understand why the air felt different when certain people walked in. Too young to explain why some smiles made your stomach turn. But your body knew. Your instincts were already recording data, filing patterns, building a database of human deception that would later become your superpower. You learned to read the room before you could read books. You decoded emotional temperatures before you understood Celsius or Fahrenheit. They called you sensitive. They said you were too much. They told you to stop overthinking. But you weren't overthinking. You were processing information at a level they couldn't comprehend. Every slight change in tone was data. Every avoided eye contact was evidence. Every forced laugh was a red flag your system automatically logged. You were building an encyclopedia of human behavior while they were still learning the alphabet. And then came the moments that activated you fully. The betrayals that should have broken you, but instead upgraded your software. The lies that should have destroyed your trust, but instead gave you X-ray vision for bullshit. The manipulation that should have made you weak, but instead turned you into a master decoder. Each wound wasn't just pain, it was education. Each scar wasn't just damage, it was development. You started noticing patterns they thought were invisible. The way liars always give too much detail. The way manipulators always play victim first. The way fake people's energy feels like static electricity. The way genuine souls make the air lighter. You didn't learn this from books. You learned it from bleeding. You learned it from burning. You learned it from being broken and putting yourself back together with new parts they don't sell in stores. Here's what terrifies them most about you. They can't teach what you have. They can study psychology for decades and still not possess what flows through you naturally. They can memorize every manipulation tactic and still get caught by your radar in seconds. Because what you have isn't learned, it's lived. It's carved into your nervous system by years of having to navigate psychological minefields just to survive a normal Tuesday. You walk into a room and immediately know who's lying to whom. You can feel the affairs before they're confessed. You sense the betrayals before they happen. You catch the plots while they're still being written. Not because you're trying to, but because your entire being is tuned to a frequency they don't even know exists. You're not playing chess while they play checkers. You're playing a game they can't even see the board for. They think they're subtle with their games. They think their masks are convincing. They think their stories are airtight. But to you, it's like watching children try to lie about eating cookies with chocolate still on their faces. You see through their elaborate performances like they're made of tissue paper. You hear the lies in their silence. You feel the deception in their proximity. You taste the manipulation in the air like copper. And the funniest part? They have no idea how transparent they are to you. They're still convinced they're getting away with it. Still certain their act is Oscar-worthy. Meanwhile, you're sitting there watching their entire psychological infrastructure collapse in real time. And you haven't even said a word yet. You don't need to interrogate. Your presence alone makes them confess through their nervousness. But let's be honest about something. This gift comes with a price, doesn't it? You can't turn it off. You can't unsee what you see. You can't unfeel what you feel. You walk through life with X-ray vision in a world full of skeletons. Everyone's trying to hide. You hear the lies in "I love you." You feel the hate in hugs. You see the agenda behind every compliment. Sometimes you wish you could be naive again. Sometimes you envy the people who believe what they're told. The ones who can accept surface-level interactions without feeling the undercurrents trying to drown them. But you can't. Your system won't let you. Every interaction runs through your internal lie detector. Every conversation gets processed by your manipulation scanner. Every relationship gets filtered through your betrayal prevention software. People think you're difficult. They say you're hard to get close to. They claim you have trust issues. But it's not trust issues when your intuition has been right every single time. It's not paranoia when they actually were talking behind your back. It's not overthinking when your gut feeling saved you from another snake in sheep's clothing. You're not broken. You're protected. Protected by an intelligence they can't understand and a wisdom they can't teach. You've probably tried to ignore it, tried to give people the benefit of the doubt, tried to silence that voice that whispers, "Something's off." And every single time you ignored it, you paid the price. Every time you let their words override your instincts, you got burned. So now you don't ignore it. Now you listen. Now you trust yourself more than you trust their performances. But here's where the story gets interesting. You're not in survival mode anymore. You've graduated from defense to offense. You don't just detect psychological warfare, you conduct it without even trying. Your mere existence disrupts their programs. Your presence alone makes manipulators malfunction. Your silence speaks louder than their rehearsed speeches. You've learned to weaponize what they weaponized against you. That silence they used to punish you, you now use it to make them reveal themselves. Those mind games they played, you now play them better without even participating. That gaslighting they attempted, you now make them question their own reality just by staying steady in yours. You don't fight fire with fire. You fight fire by becoming water, flowing around their attacks, filling every space they try to create, drowning their games in your depth. When they try to trigger you, you respond with such calm it makes them question their own sanity. When they attempt manipulation, you mirror it back so subtly they end up manipulating themselves. When they lie, you don't call them out, you just ask questions that make them tangle themselves in their own web. You've become a psychological Aikido master, using their own force against them, redirecting their energy back to its source. They can't figure out how you do it, how you always end up on top without seeming to fight, how you win wars they didn't even know you were fighting, how you dismantle their plans while appearing to do nothing. But you know the secret. You're not trying to beat them at their game. You're playing an entirely different game, one where authentic power beats performed power every time. And now others are starting to notice. The other warriors, the other survivors, the other ones born speaking this language. You recognize each other instantly. That look across the room that says, I see you seeing them. That slight nod that communicates, yes, I caught that too. That silent alliance between souls who've earned their psychological black belts through combat, not classes. You find each other in crowds, drawn together by an invisible magnetism. The ones who don't flinch, the ones who don't fold, the ones whose eyes hold stories that would make therapists need therapists. You don't need to explain yourselves to each other. You don't need to prove your credentials. Your presence alone is your resume. Your survival is your certification. These are your people now, not the ones who match your energy, the ones who recognize it, not the ones who understand your words, the ones who understand your silence, not the ones who know your story, the ones who know the weight of carrying such vision. You've found your tribe, the unbreakable ones, the ungaslightable ones, the ones who were forged in psychological warfare and came out speaking its language fluently. Together you create safe spaces, not safe from conflict, safe from deception, not safe from challenge, safe from manipulation, not safe from truth, safe from lies. You build relationships based on radical honesty because anything less feels like death to souls that have survived on breadcrumbs of truth for too long. You create connections that don't require constant validation because you validated yourselves through fire. But here's the evolution they never saw coming. You're not using your powers for destruction. You're using them for construction. You're not wielding your gifts to hurt. You're wielding them to heal. You're not employing your abilities to manipulate. You're employing them to illuminate. You've taken the weapons they forged in you and turned them into tools. You help others see what they can't see. You guide people through their own psychological warfare. You teach without teaching. You heal without claiming to be a healer. You lead without needing a title. Because leadership isn't about position when you can read the room better than anyone else in it. It's about vision. And yours is 20/20 in a world full of people wearing the wrong prescription. You've become the translator for those who don't speak the language yet, the guide for those just beginning to see, the lighthouse for ships navigating storms you've already survived. Not because you went looking for this role, but because when you've been to hell and memorized the map, you can't help but leave breadcrumbs for others finding their way out. Your trauma has become your teaching. Your wounds have become your wisdom. Your scars have become your scripture, not the kind written in books, the kind written in the way you move through the world, the way you don't flinch when others try to play games, the way you smile when they attempt manipulation, the way you remain steady when they try to shake you. You've learned things they don't teach in any psychology course, like how the most dangerous people often have the warmest smiles, how the loudest victims are often the quietest abusers, how those who claim to hate drama are usually directing it from backstage, how people tell you exactly who they are in what they accuse you of being, how projection isn't just a theory, but a daily occurrence you can now spot from miles away. You know that when someone says, "I'm not trying to start anything," but they're about to start everything. When they say, "I don't want to get involved," They're already 3 moves deep in involvement. When they claim, "I'm just being honest," they're about to be everything but. You've decoded the language beneath the language, the real conversation happening under the spoken one. You understand now that psychological warfare isn't always aggressive. Sometimes it's the withdrawal of energy. Sometimes it's the strategic confusion. Sometimes it's the calculated inconsistency designed to keep you off balance. But none of it works on you anymore. You can't be destabilized by someone playing with stable. You can't be confused by someone manufacturing chaos. You can't be thrown off balance when you've learned to dance on shifting ground. You've mastered the art of being unmovable in a world full of people trying to move you. Unshakable in a reality where everyone's trying to shake everyone. Untouchable in a game where everyone's trying to touch everyone's wounds. You don't participate in the psychological warfare anymore. You transcend it. You exist above it. You watch it like a movie you've seen 1,000 times, already knowing every plot twist. And that's where your true power lies now. In your indifference to their games. In your immunity to their tactics. In your transcendence of their level. They can't psychological warfare someone who isn't at war. They can't manipulate someone who sees the strings. They can't gaslight someone who carries their own light. They can't play mind games with someone whose mind isn't playing. You've reached a level of psychological sovereignty they didn't know existed, where their opinions don't penetrate, where their judgments don't land, where their projections bounce off like rubber bullets on armor you forged from their previous attacks. You're not fighting them. You're not even defending against them. You're simply existing at a frequency they can't reach. This is what terrifies them most. Not your ability to fight back. Your ability to not need to. Not your capacity for revenge. Your capacity for indifference. Not your skill at playing their games. Your transcendence of needing games at all. You've become psychologically bulletproof, not because you built walls, because you became the bullet. When they try to trigger your trauma, they find you've already healed it. When they try to push your buttons, they discover you've rewired the whole system. When they try to find your weakness, they realize your weakness became your strength while they were still planning their attack. You're not unbreakable because you never break. You're unbreakable because you've already been broken and rebuilt yourself with better material. Now you're charting territory they don't have maps for, creating psychological technologies they don't have terms for. You're not just surviving in their world. You're building your own, with different rules, different physics, different possibilities. A world where authenticity is power, where vulnerability is strength, where truth is the only currency that matters. In your world, masks don't work, illusions don't hold, deceptions don't compute. It's like you're running different software that automatically detects and deletes bullshit, software that has pop-up blockers for manipulation, software that runs constant background scans for authenticity. They try to upload their viruses, but your system just laughs and quarantines their attempts. You've become the antivirus in human form, the firewall against psychological invasion, the security system that makes infiltrators nervous just by existing. Not through effort, through evolution, not through study, through survival, not through training, through transformation. You didn't learn to speak this language. You were born already fluent. They're still using translation apps while you're writing poetry in the mother tongue. People ask how you always know, how you always see it coming, how you never get fooled anymore. They want your secret. They want the formula. They want the quick fix. But there isn't one. You can't teach someone a language they haven't lived. You can't give someone instincts they haven't earned. You can't transfer wisdom that was paid for in blood. But here's the ultimate truth they'll never understand. Your power isn't in what you can see. It's in what you choose to do with that sight. You could destroy people with what you know. You could dismantle their entire psychological infrastructure with 3 well-placed observations. You could leave them questioning everything they thought they knew about themselves. But you don't. You act as if you aren't hurt, and you act as if you are enough. Because real power isn't in destruction, it's in the choice not to destroy. Real strength isn't in using your weapons, it's in keeping them sheathed. Real mastery isn't in playing the game better, it's in changing the game entirely. You're not interested in psychological warfare anymore. You're interested in psychological peace. Not the fake kind built on ignoring reality, the real kind built on accepting it. You see their games and choose not to play. You spot their manipulations and choose not to engage. You detect their lies and choose not to expose them unless necessary, because you've learned something they haven't. The best revenge isn't winning their war, it's refusing to fight it. The best response to their psychological warfare isn't better warfare, it's transcendent peace. You've become what they never expected. Someone who speaks their language but refuses to use it against them. Someone who sees their games but doesn't need to win them. Someone who understands their warfare but chooses peace instead. This isn't weakness. This is the ultimate power. The power of someone who could destroy but creates instead. Who could expose but protects instead. Who could dominate but liberates instead.